Legislature is back in session. We went into recess for lunch and return it back to the author. The lady from Barragata, ma'am, you have the floor.
Sedus Mase, Mr. Speaker and colleagues, hello once again. I rise as the author of Bill number 139-38 COR to underscore the purpose and urgency of this measure. This legislation proposes to establish Guam's first ever Foster Children's and Foster Parents Bill of Rights, firmly anchoring essential protections into law for those who rely on our foster care system every day. Now, I do understand that there were concerns on the floor earlier. One is the right of individuals to make and receive confidential telephone calls and send and receive unopened mail, unless prohibited by court order. This provision, subsection F of the Foster Children's Bill of Rights, was deliberately retained to uphold a standard of due process and safeguard personal dignity, particularly for individuals in care settings. During the markup session, the Bureau of Social Services Administration, or BOSA, affirmed that while foster children do have right to privacy, such communication may be restricted by court. BOSA further noted that they too have the authority to impose these restrictions. However, they did not present the procedural framework or criteria they use in determining when such restrictions are warranted. The other concern is the right to discipline in a manner that is appropriate to the child's level of maturity. This provision, subsection G of the Foster Children's Bill of Rights, was intentionally preserved in recognition of the child's developmental capacity and the need for trauma-informed, culturally responsive care within our licensed facilities. With DPHSS requested its removal during markup, the committee found the language to be not only appropriate but necessary to underscore the ethical standard that guides child-centered care across all settings referenced in the bill. As the bill's author, I felt it was necessary to move forward beyond internal protocols and articulate clearly and publicly the standards that foster youth and caregivers deserve. Informal guidance is not enough. By codifying these rights, we provide clarity, legal recognition, and accountability. Mr. Speaker, this measure establishes distinct rights for children in foster care, including access to safe housing, education, healthcare, family connection when appropriate, and protection against discrimination or harmful practices. It also reaffirms rights for foster parents, ensuring transparency, access to child welfare information, support services, and the ability to participate in case planning without fear of reprisal. It respects foster parents not as secondary actors, but as essential members of the caregiving team. I want to directly address the feedback this bill has received. Some have questioned its enforceability, but every child covered by this legislation is already under court jurisdiction. The family court system provides a clear pathway to resolve grievances and enforce protections. This bill works in connect with that structure, not apart from it. Others have asked whether the bill reflects the real practices of our foster care system. As the author, I can affirm that it does, Mr. Speaker. I convened a comprehensive markup session with leadership from the Bureau of Social Services Administration to ensure this legislation codifies current practice. Every provision was informed by real-world experience, grounded in how foster care operates in our island today. So, Mr. Speaker, while this bill is an essential step, it does not resolve every challenge. As our foster youth transition into adulthood, Many face significant hurdles: housing insecurity, limited educational access, and the absence of supportive networks. That reality must inform our next step. I will be working closely with colleagues and federal partners to secure additional support for transitional services and ensure continuity of care beyond age 18. These efforts will focus on expanding post-care housing, workforce training, mental health support, and mentorship opportunities. Aging out of foster care should not mean aging out of support. I'm deeply grateful to my colleagues who signed as co-sponsors. Your commitment helped shape and strengthen this legislation, and your collaboration reflects the best of what we can achieve together. As we prepare for the vote on Bill 139-38, I ask for your support. Let's move forward with the solve. Seduus Masi to all of you, and thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Did you want to add co-sponsors to this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to add to Bill number 139-38 COR as amended the following co-sponsor: Speaker Frank Blas Jr., Senators Sean Gumatautau, Senators Chris Duenas, Senator Jesse Lujan, and Senator Chris Barnett.
On the motion to add senators as co-sponsors, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to place Bill number 139-38 COR as amended by the committee and further amended as amended by the committee to the voting file.
And as amended on the floor. You just gave co-sponsorship. Okay, so.
Oh, as amended on the floor as well.
On the bill number 139-38 COR, as amended by committee and further amended on the floor. To move to the third reading, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered. The next bill was bill number 110-38 COR. Senator Sean Gumatautau, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I move to place Bill 110-38 COR as amended by the Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Regulatory Affairs, Technology, Justice, Elections, and Retirement on the third reading file and request to speak on the bill.
You can proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for this opportunity to present Bill 110 as amended, which, if approved, codifies the Criminal Justice Automation Commission, commonly known as the CJAC. Established in 1993, the CJAC has developed the automated infrastructure that has improved access to critical criminal justice records for Guam's law enforcement agencies. Mr. Speaker, through testimony offered during the May 8, 2025 public hearing on Bill 110, Associate Justice of the Guam Supreme Court, Catherine Merriman, summarized the actions that were taken many years ago to help establish CJAC and maintain this important organization in support of Guam's public safety infrastructure. Justice Merriman emphasized that without reliable access to accurate, timely, and complete information, peace officers faced greater risks when responding to incidents in the field, incidents that you, Mr. Speaker, are well aware of. In response to the need for establishing the necessary criminal justice data sharing systems, the Judiciary of Guam brought together key partners and developed an automated infrastructure that improved access to critical records and reduced duplication among agencies. Over the last 3 decades, the Judiciary of Guam has managed Guam's connection to the National Crime Information Center, oversees the submission of fingerprint records to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and maintains Guam's criminal history repository. This data infrastructure, according to the Judiciary of Guam, ensures that law enforcement has consistent, reliable access to essential information for investigations and officer safety. Mr. Speaker, since the creation of this ad hoc commission, the Judiciary of Guam has worked closely with all executive branch criminal justice entities and related federal law enforcement partners to ensure that all the data needed to support their respective public safety roles are developed, collected, stored, and shared. CJAC has guided improvements to the court's case management system, the criminal justice information system, the island-wide fingerprinting system, the technologies in police patrol cars today that link these systems, and a host of other improvements to support the law enforcement needs of Guam's public safety agencies. If approved, Bill 110-38 COR as amended formally creates the CJAC in statute and sets the Commission leadership and its membership. With the assistance of the Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Regulatory Affairs, Technology, Justice, Elections, and Retirement, and its chair, Senator Tello Taitigui, and based on the recommendations put forward by the Judiciary of Guam and the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, Bill 110 was amended to ensure that rules and procedures relative to data integrity, consistency, and interoperability are prioritized. Bill 110 was also amended, requiring the CJAC to submit a written report annually to the Governor of Guam and to the Guam Legislature, summarizing the Commission's activities, accomplishments, challenges, and plans to enhance interagency collaboration and improve the integration of Guam's criminal justice information systems. The report shall also include information regarding interagency agreements related to criminal justice data sharing infrastructure and associated costs, which according to the Judiciary of Guam is budgeted in the current fiscal year, and a request for $458,000 in FY 2026 covers participating agencies. Mr. Speaker, with these amendments, Bill 110 strengthens the work of the CJAC moving forward and ensures the organization continues as what the Homeland Security Advisor offered in her testimony to bridge information gaps that currently exist between agencies, allowing them to identify potential threats more quickly and respond more effectively. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Judiciary of Guam, our sister branch, and other members of our criminal justice community, past and present, for their work and commitment to supporting the CJAC. It is because of their dedication to public service and the vision they shared many years ago that our island is able to benefit from a criminal justice data sharing infrastructure, a system that the Director of Public Health and Social Services in the public hearing has rightly argued, which could make a critical difference between a child being safe or remaining in harm's way. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to present Bill 110-38 COR as amended, and I ask each of my colleagues today for their support on this important measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill, any senator, good senator from Tumuning, ma'am, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker. I stand in full support of this measure, and I'd like to thank the author of the legislation with the work that we both did during the market meeting to provide information that is, only makes this bill stronger. And we took the time to ensure that this bill comes out to be a stronger bill. Cover the, cross your T's and dot your I's, especially in the section that we added, a new section 16102G. by submitting written report no later than May 1st of each month, Imagahagan and the Speaker of the Legislature, and summarizing the Commission's activities, accomplished challenges, and plans to enhance the integrity of collaboration and improve the integration of Guam's criminal justice information system. So, and then it goes on to say, the report shall also include information regarding associate costs and integrating that the author of the legislation was actually discussing earlier. I think this was a great opportunity for us to keep tabs on what's going on. And when it comes to the point of funding, which, you know, we're going to find that as we move on, going into budget, where we're going to have to cut, we're going to have to ensure that other people do their fair share. Those other agencies that utilize this system, they should, you know, be able to pay their part in keeping this up and running. So I appreciate the work that my staff did on this particular bill. It was extensive in a way, but it was actually most needed, you know, something that they were anticipating for a while to get this codified. So I thank the author of this bill and ask that I be a co-sponsor on this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, I rise today in strong support of Bill number 110-38 COR, which formally establishes the Criminal Justice Automation Commission under Guam law. This legislation is more than just administrative. It is foundational to strengthening public safety, interagency coordination, and our government's ability to secure, manage critical justice information. Mr. Speaker, our community depends on law enforcement and justice personnel having access to timely, accurate, and secure information. This bill answers that call, and I commend the author for highlight. The new annual reporting requirement ensures transparency and accountability, keeping both the executive and legislative branches informed of CJAC's work, challenges, and funding needs. Mr. Speaker, this is a government-wide infrastructure bill wrapped in a public safety and civil liberties mission. It prioritizes data integrity, it defends officers' safety, and it secures our future ability to modernize and integrate criminal justice tools across the agencies. For those reasons, I respectfully urge my colleagues to join me in voting in full support of Bill number 110-38, and I ask the author to include me as a co-sponsor of the bill. Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Zonia, ma'am, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi. I stand in support of this bill. This is a commission that's been going on for many years, and contributing agencies, we've seen it in our budgets every year as well, that on behalf of GPD, we appropriate money to CJAC for GPD's involvement, the Department of Corrections, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Judiciary. And the Judiciary has been managing this together with OTEC, and the bill now codifies this. But what I really appreciate is that this CJAC really has great potential. And I think including these other agencies in it, including the Marianas Region Fusion Center and CPS, actually the whole Division of Children's Wellness, is going to help us in all our capacities. And these are because of cases that we found where CPS was not aware of the criminal record of the foster parents. They were not aware. We had oversight hearings regarding this. We had an oversight hearing on DOC when and even the judiciary, because of things like they were letting people out, not knowing that that was exactly the same person who had a warrant of arrest or something, because of the different identities that they use. So they were able to sync. And DOC was the one that was not fully synced, and that was found out. And so we were able to, through CJAC and federal funds and the local funds, they were able to prioritize the syncing of DOC so that that would not happen again, that at every single stage of law enforcement, that they would know everything that anyone knew. And so I welcome the contributions, but with the added agencies. And I guess I would like to clarify with the author, if he would, does inclusion of these other agencies necessarily mandate that they will be contributing members, or will we be seeing the same contributing members? It says they share costs based on their data contributions. I think a lot of them are just users, not really necessarily contributors, if the author would yield.
Would the author yield? You can proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, as we're well aware, there's a very handful of folks who are contributing, and many do use the system, but they are not the ones who are wholly responsible for the data input into our criminal justice current network. Does that answer your question?
All right, so that will not be increasing, for example,
No.
the cost to public health to just
No,
see
no.
the data.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and yeah, I support this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, are there any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? No other senators. Senator Gumatato, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel that this process has come full circle for me. As Director of Policy Planning and Community Relations for the Judiciary Guam, I literally walked this bill from the office of the Administrator of the Courts down Archbishop Felixberto Flores Street here to the Guam Congress Building to submit to the Committee on Justice on behalf of then Chief Justice Catherine Merriman. I followed up pretty regularly with the then Speaker, with the committee, hopeful for a public hearing date, which was a pressing matter for the judiciary. Weeks would go by, I would leave the branch a bit later, and then tracking the CJAC bill just stopped. Then I got sworn in here, met my friends at our sister branch, held a public hearing, we discussed the version before us, and now here we are. For 3 decades, the judicial branch of the government of Guam has led the Criminal Justice Automation Commission. They were not just looking out for their work only. The members of the CJAC for 3 decades led and continue to lead a government-wide effort to develop and maintain the criminal justice information systems needed to enforce all of the laws of Guam. As part of the leadership team at the Judiciary of Guam from 2017 to 2020, I witnessed the important work of the Commission firsthand. Their work continues to evolve and remains an important central repository to disseminate and store data shared by our local and our federal criminal justice and law enforcement entities. With Bill 110-38 COR as amended, this 38th Guam Legislature has a significant opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that through public law, the Criminal Justice Automation Commission and its continued operation will provide this important government commission spanning all 3 branches of our government with the stability that it requires and deserves as a permanent entity. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. and our colleagues for the opportunity to move this critical issue forward. And I would like to motion to add senators as co-sponsors, Senators Tello Taitigui and Shelley Calvo as well.
On the motion to include Senators Taitigui and Calvo as co-sponsors to this legislation, are there any objections? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to place Bill 110-38 COR as amended by the Committee on Economic Investment, Military Buildup, Regional Relations, Regulatory Affairs, Technology, Justice, Elections, and Retirement, and further amended on the floor. To the voting file.
On the motion to place Bill 110-38 COR as amended by the committee and further amended on the floor into the third reading, any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Vice Speaker Toria, you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move Bill number 81-38 COR as amended by the Committee on Land, Environment, Housing, Agriculture, Parks, and Infrastructure to the third reading. I'd like to speak on the motion, please.
You can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill 81-38 COR is an act to amend subsection 12401D C53 Article 4, Chapter 12, Title 5, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to correcting the definitions of solar HVAC contractors, subclassification of licenses. And what this bill does, Mr. Speaker, is just a housekeeping bill. It amends the newly adjudicated rules and regulations of the Contractors Licensing Board to remove the photovoltaic contractor certification requirements for installers of solar HVAC systems, including solar water heaters. And Mr. Speaker, during the public hearing, the Guam Contractors Licensing Board Executive Director, Mr. Uggan, had stated that the current definitions for the solar contractors and solar power system contractors have led to some unnecessary confusion and redundancy within the licensing process. And during the revision of their rules and regulations, this redundancy was unfortunately introduced in error. So this bill 81, Mr. Speaker, is just to correct that error and to ensure that the certifications for the photovoltaic certifications is different from the HVAC contractors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome, sir. On the bill, are there any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Senator from Talofofo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to briefly comment on Bill 81-38 COR, which, if approved, removes the electrical system knowledge requirements for photovoltaic electrical systems from the solar heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC contractors' licensing requirements. I want to personally thank the Contractors License Board for providing background information on this bill, which was described during the May 7th, 2025 public hearing as the Vice Speaker mentioned as a simple housekeeping measure. According to the Contractors License Board, the organization did not catch an error inadvertently made during the recent 2024 revision of their rules and regulations, particularly the definitions for solar contractors and solar power systems contractors. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, the error was not addressed prior to their submission of their rules, as the Vice Speaker mentioned, when it was submitted to the Governor's Office and the Guam Legislature pursuant to procedures of our administrative adjudication law. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, in response to my question during the bill's public hearing regarding the absence of industry stakeholders during the agency-led public comment meeting held on February 15th, 2024, CLB represented to their understanding applicants were awaiting the adoption of the License Board's updated rules and regulations, recognizing the issuance of specialized licenses was put on hold for a couple of years. It was based on findings from the Office of the Public Accountability in 2023, and I think we're going to hear about the OPA a lot during this particular session. According to the OPA, more than 200 contractors on Guam possess specialized licenses, even though the License Board at the time lacked the authority to issue those licenses. With that said, Mr. Speaker, I want to again thank the Vice Speaker and the author of the bill, Tony Atta, for working with the CLB leadership to strengthen the entity's updated rules and regulations. The work of the License Board is critical to ensuring contractors, including those in specific fields such as solar HVAC systems, are properly vetted and licensed by the government of Guam. It's their certification that attests to their training and completion of examinations required for their respective industry. Again, Bill 81-38 supports the safety and health of contractors and consumers. And again, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the time to speak on the measure.
On the bill, are there any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? No other senators, Vice Speaker, sir, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague, Senator Shanga Matato, for speaking on the motion. I'd like to just make an amendment to add co-sponsors Shelley Calvo and Shanga Matato as my co-sponsors on Bill 81-38.
On the motion to include Senators Cabo and Gumbatato as co-sponsors to the bill, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I move place 81-38 COR as amended into the third reading.
On the motion to place Bill 81-38 COR as amended into the third reading, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered. Next bill, Bill number 149-38 LS. Gentlelady from Jonia, ma'am, you are recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to place Bill number 149-38 LS to the third reading, and I'd like to speak on that motion.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Caesar's Wasi. Bill 149 is an act to amend Section 7160E and 7161F, Chapter 7, Title 16, Guam Code annotated relative to waiving veterans' license plate fees. So currently in Guam law, past legislatures have put into law to waive fees for license plates and licenses for 100% disabled or individually unemployable due to military service-connected injuries, veterans. They've also waived those fees for recipients of at least one of the following military awards, and these are the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Cross, Service Cross, the Navy Cross, the Coast Guard Cross, the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Silver Star, Bronze Star, with V device, or the Purple Heart medals. And along with those veterans, they waive the fees for their spouses, their legal guardians, or surviving spouses. And they also waive fees for Gold Star parents. So this bill would extend that waiver of fees to those veterans who served in the three wars, including the World War II veteran, the Korean War veteran, and the Vietnam War veteran, as long as they register with the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs, notwithstanding their disability rating or unemployable certification. Now, many of the veterans in this classes are actually included already in the waiver of fees, but this would extend it to all of them. And this is in part, of course, with the utmost respect for these veterans and all veterans, but for these in particular because they all exceed 70 years in age. And it is intent of the bill and our legislature to honor them, their service, and their commitment to our island through a waiver in license plate fees. As stated in one of the testimonies by the director of the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs, Mr. Jose San Agustin, he said, as a small token for our elderly veterans, the passing of this bill will serve as a true commitment of appreciation to our older generation, embraced, respected, and understood by our younger generation of veterans. Joseph Mofness, retired Command Sergeant Major, 36 years in the U.S. Army, stated that As we mark the major war anniversaries, 72 years since the Korean War, 80 years since World War II, and 50 years since the Vietnam War, we must ask, how many of those who served are still with us today? Not many. Another person testifying stated on the record that in his count, we lost 8 at least in 1 year. And he noted that from one July 4th celebration to another, 8 in 1 year from, I think, Vietnam veterans alone. So this is, again, just to extend this honor and this recognition to these veterans in light especially of the upcoming new license plates that they should be getting. They're very much looking forward to receiving those. It will be bearing where their service was and if they had any medals on those plates as well. But so again, in recognition of the veterans, I don't think we can overstate why we want to do that, but I humbly ask for my colleagues' support on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, good Senator from Tumuning, recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I stand in full support of Bill 149-38. You know, I'd also like to recognize that this month was very important for this bill as well as a companion bill that's similar to license plate be done during this session. And I'd like to thank my staff who worked very hard to ensure that this bill, the committee report was finished in time and all the information that was needed to provide to my colleagues so that you had a committee report in front of you that clearly states the great support for this bill and its needs. So I did want to mention too that there was a comment that one of our veterans, Joseph Mofnis, as everyone knows, when he stated that veterans deserve more than just verbal appreciation. I mean, when he said that, that really did resonate. We're so good at saying thank you for your service, but when it comes, you know, putting the foot to the metal and moving forward, something like this really means a lot to them. Just like Nick Francisco, which we're very appreciative of always being here during public hearings when it comes to the veterans. And then he also stressed the emotional impact of recognition to our veterans. Now that really touches a lot of us, knowing exactly how grateful they are when we do things like this for them. But we are the ones that should be grateful for what they did for us, for our freedom. So I thank the author of this legislation for moving this as quickly and making sure that it gets on this July session agenda. And I ask, for the sake of my staff too, that we be the co-sponsor on this legislation that they worked so hard to get on the session agenda. So other than that, I stand in full support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. On the bill, Senator from Agate, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Committee Chair on Veterans Affairs, I also rise in support of Bill 149. And as the previous speaker mentioned, because it also stood out to me regarding what Mr. Colonel Mofnis had said, that veterans don't need to hear thank you for your service. We just need to show them, you know, by our actions that we appreciate them and what they've done for our country. And so Bill 149, it is a small but meaningful gesture to show our appreciation. So I would also like to request the author to be added as one of the co-sponsors to Bill 149. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, any others? Okay. Good Senator from Tumuning, sir, you recognize.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly rise in full support of Bill 149-38. I want to thank you and the Vice Speaker and others who were able to join us today, also in another, you know, very meaningful gesture on the unveiling of the signage of Brigadier General Ben Blas Memorial Highway. A bill you and myself and Senator Toniata, Vice Speaker Toniata, introduced that finally came to fruition today. You know, I agree with all the retiring speakers and their discussion that, you know, sometimes things seem like little things, but they're very meaningful to those who basically were willing to give all for everything that we have today and we have now. You know, I remarked in a lot of the writings about even Brigadier General Ben Blas that actually his humility was his greatest love was being a farmer and just being a true son of Guam. And the truth is that's what you get. That's one of the reasons why you get a lot of the emotion and the passion, I think, a lot of times out of our veterans in terms of trying to push forward things they're trying to get accomplished in terms of applying for benefits and so many different things. A recognition of their service and wanting to see, you know, things happen for their fellow veterans more than anything else. Most of the time, you see a lot of veterans helping veterans. It's a very, very common thing. I remember going back to even Speaker Mpinko's office. I know you remember that, Speaker. He had a full setup inside of his office, and he had his own little veterans office inside there that basically operated for veterans to help veterans, you know, particularly in applying for benefits. So here at the legislature, there's never too much that we can do. And I know that in different functions that I've been to, some of the popular named veterans who are very active in our community have, you know, asked all of us, asked me to ensure, and they were very happy that this bill was going to get on this session. So I would also like to humbly ask the author to also be a co-sponsor. Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill, any other senator? Gentleman from Jigo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in full support of this bill. And you know, later on in the session, we'll be hearing Bill 5 that I introduced with the intent of changing the designs of the veterans' license plates that will recognize the veterans for their achievement during war. And you know, this is something that will continue to recognize all the veterans that exist on the island. Thank you very much. And I ask the author if I can include me as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the bill, Senator from Talafofo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to register my support as well for Bill 149-38 LS, which, again, if approved, adds World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, and Vietnam War veterans to the list of those veterans who are exempt from paying the annual vehicle license and registration fee, notwithstanding disability or unemployable certification. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the bill as drafted requires applicants to register with the Guam Veterans Affairs Office. It is my hope that this bill will add to any ongoing efforts that that office can to reconcile Guam's Veterans Registry with DRT's veterans records for Guam driver's license and motor vehicle fee waivers. And again, recognizing that our community of veterans of foreign wars continues to get smaller as the weeks, months, and years go by, it is imperative that we as a policy-making body act on Bill 149 without delay. The adoption of Bill 149 later this week will reaffirm the immense gratitude that each and every one of us share for the service and sacrifice that all of our veterans, including those from World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam War veterans have made in defense of our collective freedoms. And Mr. Speaker, again, I thank you for the opportunity to offer my support of Bill 149, particularly as we conclude Liberation Day events, which began earlier this month, and as we are just a few days away from celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Organic Act of Guam. And I too would like to ask the author of the bill to also be a co-sponsor as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill, Vice Speaker, did you want to be recognized? You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, and I stand in full support of this legislation. I just asked the author of the bill a question. Does this pertain to all veterans, or is this for the selected categories of those that have served in particular times.
Would the author yield to the question?
Yes, this bill, as stated on page 2 and page 3, will include, in addition to those who are currently recognized, any World War II veteran, Korean War veteran, and Vietnam War veteran registered with the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs.
Sir, does that answer your question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I just asked because my colleague had previously spoken and he didn't ask that question, so he wanted me to, just so for clarification. He didn't text it in, he spoke to me right here.
Yes, sir. President.
But thank you. I stand in full support of this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're very much welcome. On the bill, you know, Senator from Georgia, you keep staring at, yes, you can speak now, sir. Senator from Georgia, yes, sir. Yeah, that's you, sir. I'll just call you out.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Let me join the chorus and say that I stand in the fullest support of this bill. Viva Veterano. And you know, it's not one measure, Mr. Speaker, not two measures, Mr. Speaker, but three measures, Mr. Speaker, in this very session that we're going to debate, discuss. I don't anticipate too much debate, more on the discussion side, but definitely, hopefully pass unanimously three measures that support the veterans. We have a holiday measure, we have the veterans license plate measure, and of course this measure which seeks to waive the fees for the license plates. And the commitment was given in the public hearing that we would get all three of these measures onto this agenda and pass them. And I think, of course, the timeline, you know, as we just got done observing all of the different liberation memorials, and you know, sadly, every day, every month, every year, that we don't do something to honor, whether it's the veterans or the war survivors, is another day, another month, another year that we potentially lose these people who are, you know, part of our most valued treasures on this island. So I definitely, as the grandson and stepson of veterans, of so many veterans in the family, I mean, you can't go anywhere on Guam without running into veterans. As we all know, we have per capita the highest enlistment rate. And, you know, I think one of the other little cherries on top of this is that it will help us to find those veterans, and maybe these enticements that we give, whether it's you get the veterans license plate or you get the fees waived, will cause some of these veterans who, for whatever reason, and I just spoke to one last week, haven't registered with the federal VA and haven't, you know, been able to receive those veterans benefits from the federal side with Uncle Sam. So definitely support that measure, and Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to speak on it.
You're very welcome. Any other senator? The great senator from Barragata, ma'am, you are recognized, and then also.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in full support of Bill number 149-38 COR. This measure is more than just a policy. It's a statement of our enduring respect and commitment to the men and women who've worn the uniform in service to our island and our nation. These service members are part of the backbone of our island's history. Many returned from war and quietly continued serving our community as teachers, farmers, tradesmen, and public servants. While some have received recognition through veteran license plates or disability benefits, this bill acknowledges those who may not carry visible wounds, but who sacrifice nonetheless. Waiving these modest fees is a small but meaningful way we can show our deep gratitude. Additionally, by aligning these benefits with milestone anniversaries, 50 years since the Vietnam War, 72 years since the Korean War, and 80 years since World War II, we ensure that the time does not erase our duty to honor their legacy. With many of these individuals now over age 70, this bill ensures they receive this recognition in their lifetime. I commend the author of the bill, and I ask that I be added as a co-sponsor. And I urge my colleagues to support this measure. Let us stand united in ensuring that Guam remains a place where our veterans feel valued, respected, and supported, not only in words, but through action. Sedus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, Senator from Tamuning, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I as well rise in full support of this measure, Bill 149-38. Likewise, I really like that it was included that the Gold Star parents were included in this measure as well, Mr. Speaker. And I hope that, I hope and pray that, we won't have any more parents that would fall under this section here. We pray for our men and women that are in conflict all the time. So with that, again, I urge my colleagues, I'm sure they'll get unanimous support for this measure to pass. But again, I stand in full support of 149-38. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill, good Senator from Barragata, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in full support of this measure. And in thinking about this, I think it's important to not only, it's part of our cultural practice of reciprocity and gratitude for our people that served during the war. In looking at World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, these were times when there was segregation and discrimination in the military. And so oftentimes our people were put in the front lines. And in reading the book by the late David Lujan Sablan, he gives an account of how he was put in front, and he was basically spared despite landmines. He was put in the front line to detect landmines. And thankfully, he came back. And when I support this bill, I think about the stories of our veterans who survived these type of conditions, in addition to my uncle who served in the Vietnam War. And so with deep gratitude, I support this legislation. Situs Masi.
Thank you very much. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? All the senators? Senator Talai, ma'am, you can close on the bill.
Situs Masi, and thank you to my colleagues. I sincerely am grateful for your words, your attendance at the public hearing, and your words of support for the veterans who showed up there, because this is for them, and for the veterans who are watching today. And I agree. We want to thank them while they are still here. We want to thank their spouses for the sacrifices that they've made as well. These veterans are now our elders. They came back and they helped each other. They came back and they continued to serve our community, to build our community, to lead us. And they also lead us in remembering those who did not come back. This is something that's very moving to me every time I attend, especially the Vietnam Veterans functions, where they will ring the bell and say the names of every single one of the 77 that did not return from Vietnam. And likewise, the other wars, that they lead us in how to pay tribute, in honor, and remembrance. So I'm very grateful, and I echo the sentiments of my colleagues that we are grateful for their service. We are grateful for their continued sacrifices after serving, and we are grateful for their leadership. And I want to thank, in particular, the Office of Veterans Affairs for their support and their willingness to assist in this, and our efforts to make sure that the registry of Guam veterans can be filled, can really match the true population of veterans that we have, in order that they will get what they have deserved for so long, and without any further excuses. I want to also recognize the committee and the work that the committee has done to swiftly move this bill, have a hearing, and get it on our floor today, as they promised. So for that, I'm very grateful. And again, thank you to all my colleagues. I'd like to motion to add co-sponsors to include the committee chair, Senator Taitagui, Those who were at the hearing, Senator Barnett, Senator Calvo, Senator Mantanani, and I'd like to add, and the Vice Speaker, and I'd like to add Senator Sabina Perez, Senator San Agustin, Senator Dueñas, and Senator Gumatalto. And Senator Lujan. And I'm sorry. Oh, no, SSM. I do have you here. Sorry, I just read it wrong. I thought I said Senator Mantanani. Yeah? Yeah, all right. Okay. Is there anyone else who I missed? Senator Parkinson? All right. Mr. Speaker, sorry. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to add you as a co-sponsor. I know you support this very much.
Okay. On the motion to include co-sponsors, any objection? No objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much. Good day for honor our veterans. Si Diyos masi.
On the motion to send the bill as amended to third reading, any objections? No objections, so ordered. Okay. We're going to take a 1-minute recess to pass out this up, okay? 1-minute recess. Legislature back in session. Next on the second reading, Senator Parrish, ma'am, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to accept substitute version Bill 30-38 COR onto the floor.
On the motion to accept Bill 30, substitute version 30-38 COR, Senator Dueñas, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, given that there's extensive work done in the committee on this bill and it's being substituted on the floor, could we ask, I'm asking the author to yield on what additional changes were made to have it substituted on the floor?
Would the author like to yield?
Yes, I yield, and I appreciate the question. And so, in looking at, you know, the amended bill, what happened was, at the request of PUC and I believe GSWA, to remove a section for the low-income customer assistance rates. That left the bill without any particular program to support low-income households. And so what this bill does, it revives the customer assistance program, which was already mentioned in the bill, in the legislative intent, as well as it provides flexibility. So it incorporated, the substitute bill incorporated the recommendations of the PUC. So what the PUC vehemently states is that they have the rule-making authority. I'm sorry, they have the rate-making authority for utilities. And so what this bill does, it addresses that, it incorporates that language into the legislative intent, but also leaves some room for when that time comes, when the PUC adopts such reduced rates. So it's really about providing options for low-income households to receive assistance, whether it's a customer assistance program or in the future, a lifeline rate.
Did I answer your question, sir?
It does, Mr. Speaker, but I just want to say to the body that, you know, and ask the committee chair, I'll ask him after this, to please send this version if it was not reviewed by the PUC and by GSWA, because this is exactly why the committee worked hard to get a product to the floor that wasn't otherwise going to be objected upon. And that was the issue. We even, in our committee report process, put up the testimony in video on the objections to a similar section that could possibly kill the bill. So I guess a second question to the author would be, in these changes, did you forward it to PUC and GSWA for review?
I did send it to GSWA. As far as the PUC, I think the bill has been addressed. We took out, there's no LICA rates, no lifeline rates that the PUC would object to. It's all in the legislative intent. But if I could just say this, Bill 165, which is the predecessor of this bill, was passed with the customer assistance program intact. And what happened was, when the introduction of this bill, we were trying to avert rate increases. And I think it's important that we move forward with this bill, because that would just basically prolong this important piece of legislation, which the PUC supports. They support the island-wide collection plan because they see it as critical to supporting the financial health of Guam Solid Waste Authority as they gain full autonomy over the solid waste operations, and also supported by the board members who see this as an important piece for Guam Solid Waste Authority. So, you know, it was passed before, the customer assistance program was passed before. There are no issues that I can tell from the general manager. There's no lifeline rate, no changes in rates, but it just encourages or highly recommends that such rates be adopted subject to the PUC approval. And so it's very much in line with the PUC's testimony, and it's very much in line with what was passed before. And I ask the body to consider these because time is of the essence. When we talk about, you know, if it was passed and not vetoed, we would have had this program up and running. And the longer we wait, the harder it is to implement such an important measure that all agree this is critical to Guam Solid Waste Authority. So I ask the body for their support in accepting the substitute version. Otherwise, you know, I think what's important to note is that we don't want to go back. to receivership. So GSWA is getting out of receivership. They're on the verge of getting out of receivership. It is costly, and this is something that the current general manager is doing all they can to cut cost. And one of the things that costs a lot is these contractual obligations that they have stated on the record that they can do at a much cheaper cost. And they are doing what is needed, and it's really up to us to support their further progress in ensuring that this particular piece of legislation, which was supported by not only the PUC, but also the audit, so there's all these proponents within Guam Solid Waste who have actually stood the test of time, from Chairman Gale, who stood through all of this when Guam Solid Waste, became our solid waste operations was under receivership, and he has been committed, and his team has been committed to getting Guam Solid Waste full autonomy. And so we really need to support them and our community so that we can, ensure that they don't go backwards. We want to make sure that they go forwards. Customer assistance program is nothing new. This body has previous bodies have supported customer assistance programs with no question. And the language that's used is the exact same language that has been passed before. So there's nothing that would raise any concerns in regards to the language here. And I think I ask for my colleagues' support so that we can continue to move forward. Otherwise, 1 year becomes maybe 2 years, maybe becomes 10 years. And I think the time is of the essence right now. Now is the time to move forward on this. And I ask for my colleagues' consideration and support for this substitute version.
Senator Reigns.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair, and I want to make it clear, I'm in favor of this bill. The reason why I did this and raised this question is because the chairman, Senator Jesse Lujan, along with myself, not only scheduled a tour of all of the facilities to include Luzon landfill, but invited others as well. And we received the briefing that discussed this program going forward. However, once again, like I said, clearly in the testimony, and I'm glad the author states that this is fully supported by the PUC and SWA, is because that was a stickler. They did not support the bill as it was presented in the public hearing, and the record will show that. So now that we have the author on the record saying this is fully supported, I'm trying to assist in preventing a possible another veto. So I'm going to look forward to the presentation, and I have no objection. Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Gentleman from Jigo, sir, you recognize?
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to support the adoption of the substitute, but we be allowed some time to review it, maybe a short recess, just so we can go over it, so we can have some meaningful discussion of exactly what my colleague brought up earlier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, let's take a couple-minute recess so that we can review the substitute version, okay? Couple-minute recess. Legislature's back in session. Is there discussion on whether or not we're going to accept the substitute version of Bill number 30-38 COR? Any other senators willing to discuss? On the motion to accept Bill 30-38 COR, accept the substitute version of 30-38 COR. Any other discussion? Huh? No, on the substitution, whether or not we're going to accept it. All right. On the motion, are there any objections? Are there any objections to accept the substituted version of 30-38 COR? No objections? So ordered.
Thank you to my colleagues for accepting the substitute version. So what the substitute bill aims to do is to ensure that every Guam's resident's garbage is collected and properly disposed of. This legislation ultimately lowers the rates per subscriber in the long run due to the resulting economies of scale.
Senator, you want to move to?
I'm sorry.
Move it
Thank
to
you.
third.
Yes.
Before.
I would like to place substitute bill 30-38 into third reading file, and I wish to discuss
As substituted on the floor.
as substitute on the floor. Yes. Thank you.
You can proceed.
So what substitute bill does, it aims to ensure that every Guam's resident's garbage is collected and properly disposed of. The legislation ultimately lowers the rates per subscriber in the long run due to the resulting economies of scale and implements a customer assistance program for eligible subscribers. Bill 30-38 would require owners of residential buildings to subscribe to public or private garbage collection services. Under Guam Solid Waste Authority, subscription to island-wide collection includes weekly garbage and recyclable collection and scheduled pickups of unwanted electronics, appliances such as white goods, which are commonly found in illegal dump sites. Bill 30-38 would allow the following exemptions. A, owners of a residential building comprised of 4 units or less or other qualifying building may forgo subscription if the lessee is obligated by the lease contract to subscribe for garbage collection services. B, if the building with a valid occupancy permit is vacant. C, if the building is occupied but not expected to generate any form of municipal solid waste. D, if there is a contract for weekly collection services with a permitted private collection hauler. Or E, and this is important, if the owner or lessee of a residential building registers with Guam Solid Waste as a self-hauler and utilizes the residential transfer stations. Bill 3038 requires Guam Solid Waste to establish a customer assistance program that includes providing discounts to low-income customers, or such as those eligible for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, Medicaid, or a special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children. The customer assistance program shall be funded through external subsidies, such as legislative appropriations or other types of funds or federal grants, not by ratepayer revenue. Substitute Bill 3038 also incorporates the PUC recommendations. So in the legislative intent, it states that this bill acknowledges the rate-making authority of the PUC and highly recommends Guam Solid Waste to establish a lifeline rate with PUC approval for households who are eligible or receiving assistance through any one of the following: SNAP, Medicaid, as well as WIC and SSI benefits. So again, the rates are not included in the bill, but it's highly recommended. This is the language in the testimony by the PUC. They provided alternate language where they state that the Y Legislature and Guahan recommends that Guam Solid Waste establish low-income customer assistance rates. so which are lifeline rates. So again, this bill incorporates those recommendations. So I just want to be clear, customer assistance program is different from lifeline rates. Those are two different things. So the lifeline rates is what the PUC objects to. The customer assistance program is something that is acceptable, as long as they're not using ratepayer revenue. So regarding which the bill incorporates, regarding the current projected rates, Guam Solid Waste existing subscriber will see a $3 a month increase in 2025, a $2 a month increase in 2026, a $3 increase in 2028, and in the 3 years, residential rates would go from $30 to $38 a month. And these fees are needed to cover the cost of collection, operation of the landfill, separation of recyclables from the waste stream. With the island-wide garbage collection, rates for residential customers will drop from $38 per month to $22.50 per month upon full implementation, which is projected to occur in January 2028. In regards to regaining full autonomy, the PUC testified the island-wide garbage collection is critical for the future financial health of Guam Solid Waste Authority. Bill 30-38 would provide a path of greater autonomy to Guam Solid Waste by stabilizing its customer base, optimize efficiency through increased household service on the same route, with lower rates through a doubling of the number of customers, and with the cost of disposal and processing being inherently high on Guam, efficiency and cost controls are especially important, and this was written in the 2020 audit of Guam Solid Waste Authority. Since that audit was completed, which was statutorily required by the PUC, Guam Solid Waste has taken significant steps to improve its operation by addressing the management audit's findings, such as reducing costs through renegotiating contracts, internalizing its workforce, route optimization, fleet expansion and replacement with investments in electric vehicle infrastructure. Guam Solid Waste, under the guidance of the dedicated board of directors under Chairman Gell and General Manager Slike and his management team, are on a mission to attain full autonomy of not only operations which occurred in 2019, but also post-closure of ORDOT, which shall be determined by the court. Bill 30-38 promotes financial stability, which is crucial to ensure that Guam Solid Waste sustains sanitary operations that protects the health of our environment and people. Island-wide trash collection is also an important, if not the most important measure to curb illegal dumping and household waste accumulation. According to Guam EPA's testimony, 80% of emergency responses were related to illegal dump fires on public and private properties with excess trash accumulation. It also will contribute to increasing recycling rates above the current 38%. Overall, Bill 30-38 also promotes equity. Everyone generates trash, and we each share in this responsibility to ensure proper disposal of our waste. I'd like to thank my co-sponsors, Vice Speaker Tony Atta, Senators Chris Barnett, Shelley Calvo, Sabrina Salas Matanani, Telo Tadigui, Therese Terlahi, and I'd like to thank Chairman Lujan and his staff for their support and their hard work in getting this bill forward. And I look forward to the support of my colleagues. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, ma'am. On the bill, as substituted, gentlelady from Tumuringa recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, anytime a substitute bill comes on the floor, especially as a co-sponsor of a bill, you want to make sure that you want to keep your name on there and that nothing has really substantially changed or gone to the worst. But the legislation brought before us on the substituted version checked off a lot of boxes here, especially when we tried to implement this in prior legislatures. To incorporate an island-wide universal trash collection service for our island. And this is similar to what Saipan is doing as well. They're going down that route. And I think we all have the same thing in mind. We're just tired of seeing these dump sites, illegal dump sites. We're tired of seeing people complaining about drive-by dumping their trash by containers, doing these drive-bys. I don't know if any of you experienced that, but I've had people talk to me about that. You know, because they refuse to even pay for it. One of my biggest concerns, though, and when we were talking about this prior, is the issue with you have family members who have who all live in like a cul-de-sac. They're all family, you know, brothers, sisters, you know, mom and dad, and they built their homes near each other. And then what one family has done was purchased a big dumpster, and this would cover the three homes, and they all, you know, share into the cost of that dumpster. And actually, in the exemption section of this legislation that the good author was mentioning, it provides every avenue in order to be exempt when it comes to proving to Guam Solid Waste if they are having some way of picking up trash. And it would provide them an exemption. My question to the author, if she should yield, is the question of, in the rules and regulations that are going to be promulgated by this body, but put together by Guam Solid Waste, will they, and they're going to be addressing the cost side of it for those who need supplemental assistance program, but will they also discuss on some of the other exemptions that we might have forgotten that may be applied to this universal service? So that's my question regarding the rules and regulations that will be promulgated by Guam Solid Waste Authority, not just for the cost assistance for those who can't afford it, but also any kind of exemptions.
The author willing to?
Additional exemptions, that is.
Author willing to yield to the question?
I do, yes, thank you. I do yield to the question. And so in Section 5 of the bill, it states a promulgation of rules and regs, and basically it states that it would, in the promulgation of the rules and regs, we would follow the AAA process. And to comply with the mandates of Chapter 51A, Title 10, which is this, what this bill would be integrated into, which is 51A. So the answer is yes, it should include those, anything that this bill includes is part of that chapter.
Okay.
Does that satisfy you?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the author for answering my question, because I think that's important to realize that even though that we have 51A 1104 and exemptions on this legislation, it doesn't stop from other opportunities, you know, for our community. That can prove that they utilize another situation, another avenue on discarding their trash. Another situation is an individual who spoke to me about his mother, who lives alone and barely generates enough trash. And he basically comes to her house and picks up the trash for her and takes it to his, you know, and puts it in his trash can because he lives alone as well. He doesn't have that much trash, but they kind of share in covering this. Now, if there is a situation where it's unaffordable or you have these retirees on a fixed income and makes it very difficult, then we have an opportunity for them to go under the customer assistance program and to state their case. And I hope that we as a body, once these rules and regulations are put in place, that we can look at this and see that, okay, this individual is having difficult, especially our retirees, like I said, on a fixed income, makes it difficult for them to have to pay for this cost when they almost, they don't generate enough trash. for a whole week. And I think it's important that we look in that area too as well. I have one other question, still under 51A1104 in exemptions. The section that says B, if the building was with a valid occupancy permit is vacant. So my question is, okay, so it is vacant. You go to Guam Solid Waste and say but it receives water, but yet it's vacant, right? Now, the owner goes to Solid Waste and say we don't generate any trash, etc. But we get water, but it's vacant. It's just there. So the question is, who monitors whether there's somebody that moves in there later on? I mean, if it's deemed as vacant and then later on somebody moves in, what can show or who monitors and enforces that building? I mean, the only thing I can think of is that Guam Waterworks would be able to determine if more water is being used, from, let's say, if it's vacant and very little water is being used or nothing at all, and then all of a sudden the water is being used. And that's a way to do it. But who really enforces this? And that's my question to the author, Mr. Speaker, is who will enforce that? Is it Guam Waterworks? Or is it Guam Solid Waste that would get the information from Guam Waterworks that there's activity on this vacant lot of utilizing water? So who does the enforcing?
Author willing to respond to the question, answer the question?
It would have to be the utility that would have to enforce this. My understanding. It could also fall under the lap of Guam EPA if they're finding, again, they respond to fires. So I could almost see this being an interagency type of enforcement. So depending on even DPW for that matter, right? So if they're seeing any issues with violations on their end, it could be approached interagency-wide. Interagency. Yeah, so that's my answer. I hope that suffices.
Did I answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it was brought to my attention that in section 14104Q, that is added, the Guam Water Works Authority shall share consumer information to the Guam Solid Waste Authority as necessary and used for establishing solid waste collections. Guam Waterworks shall not be liable for any damages, disputes resulting from the customer. So I think moving forward, I mean, it's going to take a while, 180 days to enact any kind of rules or regulation, but I think it's important to find out who will be the enforcer for something like this. And I hope it's clearly explained that if it is Waterworks that has to inform Guam Solid Waste of the activity of a vacant lot that's considered vacant and is now utilizing water, to determine that. For an example, the Guam Fire Department is out there monitoring, and they address a fire because it was started by fireworks. Do they have the authority to arrest this individual for having explosives in their possession that caused the fire, or just having explosives in their possession? Or is it GPD that has the authority to enforce picking up this individual with explosives in their hands? So you've got two agencies, and I hope that whatever rules and regulations are put in place, that it's a clear trail on who will do the enforcing. Because that's the whole nemesis of this bill, is to ensure that everyone does their fair share on this island to keep our island safe and protect our environment, most especially. especially in the north, near the aquifer. Everybody, every one of us must play a part in protecting our environment. And this is one way we can do this. So I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. And my name is here as a co-sponsor. And on the substituted version, it will remain as a co-sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, gentleman from Tumuning, sir, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I rise in cautious support of the substituted version as substituted on the floor of Bill 30-38. I thank the chairman of the committee. I asked him to go ahead and just do our diligence to double check. We're sending the bill to PUC and to GSWA just to make sure we have their concurrence. And I say that for this reason once again. I don't think anybody's going to stand here and dispute the trash problem we have on Guam. And I don't think anybody's going to stand here and dispute the fact that this universal program, as has been proposed multiple times, and getting there from here, that journey is going to definitely make a big difference in terms of how we collect, manage, and deal with our solid waste on Guam. Once again, like I said, myself and Senator Jesse Lujan went from the beginning of the center that processes this garbage all the way till we finally ended up at Luzon with the on-site managers. We toured the cell that's been covered. We toured the cell that's currently being filled. And we toured the area where the new cell will be and all the intricacies of how they're being managed. In fact, they've done some major changes to how they're managing that based on certain things that they've found out about how to continue to make it more efficient for the cells down there. And they demonstrated to us that it's been a work in progress, how to move around particular waterways and things that could have been problematic in the past. And so definitely this general manager and this team, they are on it. And I'd just like to say that one of the things that I do understand about the need for the alacrity on this is because they have the ancillary opportunity and funding sources to go out and get the additional bins, set up the whole process of island-wide collection. Their biggest thing that they kept insisting to us is, if you're going to manage the solid waste collection from the legislature, please manage it if you can introduce programs that are not mandated on their side. So I caution that basically on page 6, where we're interjecting now possible general fund appropriations which don't go to any other utility, where we're going to say that grants may be available, where we're going to say how we're going to manage that. I do agree. We'll see what the promulgation of the rules and regs are and whose responsibility is going to be whose. But to be very clear on the record, and the reason why the general manager, I believe, has had so much success in what he has done, and he's received accolades. If you go up there, they got biodiesel trucks now that they're rolling out. I mean, if you look at all the areas and the equipment that they've brought on, they're not like other entities in our government where, excuses for not being able to manage what they're doing is based on we don't have funding, or we don't have, our truck broke down, or the like of that. They really are very efficient right now, and they really know what they're doing. And so in that, they basically said, listen, we know all the discussion on who generates what amount of trash, how this happens, how that happens, and the like. Our job really is to roll this out for non-commercial, exempted from those who are already households and the like who are choosing to have commercial pickup. But our job is to say, here's the bin, here's the price. And so when we talk about managing this as a utility, in fact, You know, back when this whole thing was in its iteration in the 31st Guam Legislature, I was disappointed that we couldn't elevate this to a utility level. I tried. Other senators tried. But it's like, nope, it's going to be standalone. It won't be under the CCU. It won't, you know, it won't be managed by adding the bill to the water bill. You know, it'll continue to be a standalone entity. And thank God that because of decisions on how we've prevailed in the court and different things that have turned things around in terms of how we're managing our waste, we are here with a very solid performing trash utility, if you will. So I don't believe they're being unequivocal in their terms based on the fact that they want to be mean or they want to say, you know, our way or the highway. It's because we have such a professional at the helm who's done this in many other jurisdictions. They do it the way they do it because it's utility scale and that's the way it works. Just like sometimes here, you know, we have to go through that. We attempt to do things with utilities and they come down and tell us, you know, if you're not in the utility business, you're not in the utility business. And so I'm just saying, I want like heck to be able to see this thing happen. I really, really do. I just, you know, hope that what happens here is when this bill makes it through this process. You know, many of times, every senator who's puts a bill on as substitute on the floor runs the gauntlet, and that's the gauntlet here. If it's going to work, it's going to work. But I just hope that we don't end up with, you know, a rejection again on that reason, on that basis. And I'll continue to listen. I'll continue to make sure that we vetted it, you know, through and through to the entities that now should have it in their email here pretty soon, to be able to say, yeah, we concur with that. You know, we've concurred with that. As long as you get your revenue somewhere else, you know, knock yourself out. But I don't think that they're really going to move too much in terms of their standard operations and their standard procedures, which is these are the cans that we provide. We're going to be there on time. We're going to replace the can when it's broken. And the final to this is also why they really need to keep as tight of a structure as they can is it's kind of interesting when you get this kind of bold statement straightforward, particularly from the general manager, and that is it really doesn't cost us a whole bunch more to go out there and pick up whatever else is out there because we're out there anyways. We're passing homes and homes and homes all the time that we wish just had their bin out there because that is their economy of scale. And that's kind of why, you know, to create iteration, some said, could you make it so that if I have smaller trash, can I put my own trash can out? It just doesn't work that way. Because really they're trying to get, and in many jurisdictions now you see, I've been seeing on the chats, the village chats and the like, that, you know, they're trying to get fully automated to where they only use the arm for two reasons. One is efficiency. It doesn't mean they don't got to get another guy in the truck, because sometimes that breaks down and they have to resort to the other. It really minimizes injuries and it's for safety. One of the most, you know, dangerous parts of what these guys do is those guys that are out there dealing with the, you know, with the carts. And so, you know, there's all kinds of machinations of how folks have tried to solve this problem for volume and different things. And, you know, this is not rocket science or magic. It's done in so many other jurisdictions that we know of stateside that have very, very efficient solid waste management. And so I just say that to say, you know, I'm going to vote for the bill, but I just wanted to raise those issues because we don't have any other utility whereby, other than lifeline rates, whereby there's a subsidy to the utility from the general fund. If those agencies are going to be managing grants, typically they're the ones who apply for the grants, or they, you know, they have it, you know, attached to whatever other larger grants sometimes, or grants that just come out from time to time that are designed to supply, support municipal waste management. But, you know, so we'll say a rosary and see what happens. But I just wanted to make those observations simply because they've asked us for a bill that looks like this, and we really, really, really want to get this in. So maybe it works, but it is prudent to bring up the possibilities and to discuss it. In closing, you know, I know times are tough, and as tough as can be. Any added bill and anything you have, you know, can be tough to deal with. But let's remember also, because of the economies of scale that don't exist, we also make it tougher for those who are currently paying the bill. So pray that we find a solution so that we don't get to $45 and we get everybody at 22. Jesus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, Senator from Talavovo, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to rise and offer up maybe my observations of Bill 30 as we've been presented this afternoon. The items that we throw in the trash or in the recycling bin seem to go away, picked up off our curbs weekly and immediately put out of our minds. But there is no away, if you will. The trash that we discard often comes back into our lives, sometimes as a product made with recycled material, but more often as plastic littered across our island beaches or parks. For decades, while much of our brothers and sisters in America has sent much of its trash halfway around the world in search of a new away, the concept is quite new to us living here in Guam. Mr. Speaker, the bill generally mirrors and builds upon Bill 165-37 COR, which was approved by the 37th Guam Legislature, but vetoed by the governor on May 4, 2024. In her veto message, the governor noted that while the bill proposed to mandate subscription to the island-wide garbage collection program with a penalty for noncompliance, the proposal should immediately help those who would be burdened by the new government mandate. Mr. Speaker, while this governor fully supports an island-wide garbage collection requirement, she was against imposing this new requirement on individuals, including our Manumco, who have the least ability to absorb that cost without assisting them in meeting this new burden. Recognizing that the original version of Bill 30 required GSWA to establish low-income customer assistance rates for low-income subscribers, conceivably to address the governor's concerns, the amended and this substituted version removed the LICA requirement because it potentially violates the rate-setting authority vested in the Public Utilities Commission under the Organic Act of Guam. Now, according to the bill's committee report, the Oversight Committee recommended that any proposal involving the development of low-income assistance programs must be executed through appropriate government assistance programs, not by legislative rate setting or GSWA ratepayer subsidies. With that said, Mr. Speaker, I have a point of information for the primary sponsor of Bill 30. To what extent will the PUC be involved in the creation of income-eligible standards for a residential ratepayer to receive financial assistance inclusive of discounts to low-income customers? Question to the author, Mr. Speaker.
Would you yield to the question?
Yes, I yield to the question. So the PUC made it very clear that any revenue from ratepayers must go through the PUC if that's going to be used for any customer assistance or reduced rates for those that are in need of financial assistance. So if it involves ratepayer revenues, then it would have to go through the PUC. This bill does not include that. It basically uses external subsidies for the customer assistance program.
Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recognizing again that every household generates trash and that we have a shared obligation to dispose of this trash in a safe and responsible manner, I also understand there are families across our island who struggle with the rising cost of living and at times have to choose between securing monthly trash collection service or paying for food and medicine. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to add my comments on the record on Bill 30-38 as substituted.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill, any other senators wishing to Senator from Georgia, sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise in support of the measure, the substitute version of the bill, which I am still proud to be a co-sponsor of. Anybody who's driving anywhere on our island who looks around at the scenery of our little paradise probably sees a whole lot of trash. As a member of the media, I lost track of how many stories we did on illegal dump sites. And it was like the same story over and over again, because you cover the illegal dump site, the agencies or community groups come and clean it up, and then lo and behold, weeks, a month later, that same illegal dump site pops up again. And this is all over the island. It used to be at just certain spots, like the pipelines. That's where you'd find the illegal dumps. And as a reporter, you know, okay, let me go check these different spots. But it's not just at those same old spots anymore. It's all over, from the north to the south, east to the west. It's a huge, huge problem. And huge problems don't often come with easy solutions. But I believe this bill is a solution nonetheless, even if it is a little difficult. Even if it does require some short-term discomfort. Should we reach the long-term goal, and you know, one of the long-term goals is a rate of $22 a month for trash service, and I'm assuming that would just be for the regular Joe and Josefa cruises out there. And I don't agree with this assessment that we're stepping on the PUC's toes. And I commend the author for thinking of the little people, the Tananas and the Tunpeats, the people who, like one of my colleagues said, have to choose between, are we going to pay for trash service or are we going to put food on the table? And these are very real conversations all over the island. And so the solution for this is to get everybody on this trash service. And just to go through some of the numbers in the public hearing, the Guam Environmental Protection Agency told senators present that they receive, just last year, hundreds of solid waste complaints concerning illegal dumping and household waste accumulation. The administrator of Guam EPA went on to say 80% of Guam EPA's emergency responses were related to illegal dump fires on public and private properties with excess trash accumulation. She also testified on a recent fire that took place in March. Guam EPA responded to that trash fire reported by GFD and found piles of trash bags, litter, and junk vehicles at a home with no trash service. The resident, a single mother of 5, stated that they try to take their trash to the transfer station, but they don't have a truck and they struggle financially. Unemployed and low-income families often prioritize other expenses over trash disposal. Mr. Slike, the general manager of GSWA, I'm a fan, in his testimony talked about the 2 main concepts behind mandatory universal trash collection, whatever you want to call it. It's done in so many other places. The first principle of it is proper waste management, and Mr. Slike explained that this means every individual generates trash. And because of that, a convenient, safe, and sanitary method for collection and disposal must be available to all. The second tenet of the philosophy behind mandatory trash collection is what Mr. Slight calls equitable cost distribution. And this is pretty simple. It basically means that since we all make trash, we should all pay for it. Mr. Slick also addressed the idea that the perception that this mandatory universal trash service is going to be forced upon non-participants. Some individuals claim they don't produce enough trash to warrant participation. Others argue they can't afford the fees, and others see mandatory collection as excessive government control. But I think the bill makes a lot of allowances. For example, some of the scenarios that were raised by the good senator, the good gentle lady from Timoning are very valid, and I believe they're addressed in the bill. One of the concerns I had in the previous version of this bill was, what about those self-dumpers? You know, the people who do have a truck and pile their trash and they go dump at the transfer station. I had expressed concern that, you know, these are people who are responsibly disposing of their trash, and would they be required to get the monthly service? And they wouldn't. They would just have to register with GSWA as self-haulers who use these transfer stations. So, you know, I think the author did very diligent work in covering all of the bases with this very big solution to one of our biggest problems. And the PUC, despite some of the concerns of my colleagues, agrees. They agree with the bill. In their testimony, they said passage of this bill may reduce the amount of the rate increase that GSWA will seek in its pending rate case. They also testified that the requirement for universal service is an accepted industry-wide standard for garbage collection. They further said the bill represents a well-thought-out plan to address the financial needs and eventual autonomy of GSWA. Further, they testified that requiring all residential building owners and households to support the cost of the solid waste system is fair, just, and equitable. And so once again, the author, through this measure, has demonstrated her continued commitment to make the difficult choices, the choices that aren't necessarily politically popular, to make a stand for these issues, even though the politics may say, oh, we're going to force everyone to sign up for a trash service. It takes courage to stand up and address issues that really seem like there's no end in sight, there's no solution in sight. But this is the solution for illegal dumping. And this is the solution to, unfortunately, we have to legislate it. But I believe that resolving this problem and solving this issue, which has been occurring for decades, will mandate that our people have more pride in our island. We see less trash, and that's what I see this bill doing upon its implementation. Not only will it lead to lower rates for everybody across the board, not only does it create opportunities for solid waste to assist customers, not only does it recommend to the PUC that they implement and create these lifeline rates for those people who struggle with those choices, whether to dump their trash legally or to get that latang chutney for tonight's dinner. So I stand in full support of the bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it as well, and to really put this solution into play. Like I said, it's a tough problem, and the solution isn't going to be easy, but it is a solution nonetheless to deal with a problem that has plagued our paradise for far too long. So I commend the author. I ask my colleagues to support the measure, Mr. Speaker, and I think in this version that's been substituted, we're addressing the concerns that the governor had when she vetoed the bill. And so I pray for its swift passage, and I pray that it gets signed into law so that we can get one step closer to lowering the rates for everybody, and more importantly, getting closer to ensuring that we as legislators, as elected voices, do what we can to ensure that not only do our people get to live in a true paradise, but that our children and our grandchildren are around to inherit one as well. Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill. Gentlelady from Georgia, you recognize me?
Thank you. I rise in full support of this bill. And I want to point out that the first time I heard this universal trash being proposed for Guam was 2021. That was the governor. At the time, they were talking about how to clean up the island, the illegal dump sites, and how it was a public health issue. And in a 2021 article, she's quoted as saying, one of the things we've been discussing is if we mandated universal collection, meaning every household now had the ability to get rid of their trash in an organized manner and for government services to do that, we believe illegal dumping will be decreased. We're looking at mandating trash services for everybody. We're going to have trash collection for everybody. And it's not just those that are registered and can pay. We're going to roll that out. It's just a matter now of how much it means. And of course, our focus is going to be on how much amount of subsidy can we do to minimize the cost of the trash collection. In another article, she's quoted as saying, one of the reasons we're pretty persistent on this universal trash collection is we feel this is a way to deter and eliminate illegal dumping. And so, listening to that and the consistent testimony of Guam Solid Waste, that this will deter illegal dumping, we went for it. And in the 37th Guam Legislature passed, I thought, a beautiful bill. It was not only going to prevent illegal dumping, but it was going to allow Solid Waste to come up with what they needed to continue operations, to increase the capacity of Luzon landfill, to clean up ORDA. They needed money, and if we didn't pass something like that, they were going to increase our fees. That was what was on the table. The bill was passed, but the bill was vetoed. Vetoed because, according to the governor, while the bill established a customer assistance program to provide financial assistance to eligible ratepayers, the bill does not provide any details as to when the program will be implemented, how it will be funded, or the level of assistance. But if you read the bill, it very clearly says, GSWA shall establish the eligibility standards to receive financial assistance, shall include a reduction of waiver of fees subject to the approval of the Guam PUC. It did not infringe on the Guam PUC. The PUC was in full support of that bill. GSWA was supposed to establish the rules so that that could be implemented, and that's exactly how it should be done, where GSWA and PUC work together to establish rates or reduced rates. But the bill was vetoed in March 2024. And because of the veto, PUC is now moving forward with solid waste rate increases, trash collection rate increases, significant ones that they warned us about. $5 rate increases in 2026 January, very soon. And by 2028, it will be up to $38 versus the $30 currently. So they went on a tour to have hearings, and I really haven't seen that very often. They went to Tamuning, Asanmaina, Dedido, having hearings in the evenings regarding these rate increases. And because of so those rate increases are set to be put on PUC's agenda for determination for passage, because GSWA needs it. Unless they get universal trash, they will be able to decrease our rates, decrease them even more significantly from $30 to $22.50, a $10.50 savings. That's one of the biggest savings I've seen in any fees or rates, even in the fuel tax exemptions that we've allowed. We don't see that kind of rate reduction. So this is huge, but it was vetoed. And in the veto, the money that GSWA had to purchase the extra trash collection carts that they needed, $4 million they had set aside in ARP funds, expired. Emergency rental assistance that people could have used to pay while the rules were being made, expired. Because that was March, and the funds expired in December, I believe. The PUC, again, supports this bill. This bill that has been worked on very diligently with the Guam Solid Waste. And they have committed to working with solid waste on the fees and for how to take care of those who will need it. And as pointed out, this is really the only way, unless the governor does what she proposed and comes up with a subsidy. By executive order, I don't even know if that would be satisfactory to the PUC. They seem to have in this bill now what they say is legally and technically required, that the fee-setting authority remains with them and that they will work for reduced rates for those who need it. And PUC was so crystal clear, and GSWA was crystal clear in their testimony. GSWA said, this will minimize illegal dumping, which can lead to serious communicable diseases. PUC says, passage of this bill may reduce the amount of rate increase that GSWA will seek in its pending rate case. The requirement for universal service is an accepted industry-wide standard for garbage collections. In other words, it's done in cities across America. The bill presents a well-thought-out plan to address the financial needs of GSWA. And in that, they said, all senators should support universal collection services by GSWA rather than compelling GSWA to seek larger rate increases from the ratepayers. Requiring all residential building owners and households to support the cost of the solid waste system is fair, just, and equitable, as some of my colleagues have also iterated. And while the PUC supports low-income customer assistance rate, it's the PUC that must approve that. And so the bill has been amended to ensure that that is going to be done, to recognize the independence of the PUC. And as the author said, those have been put into the intent now. It's actually maybe less compelling of a mandate than in the previous bill that was passed and vetoed. So I really think it's going to take the political will of this legislature to insist that it's logical, that it makes sense for ratepayers, that we have found ways to make exemptions for those who need it, that there are ways to take care of those who are in need. As soon as we can pass the bill, then they can get to work. And I would wager that they have several models waiting because this has been in the works for so long. And the rate increases are really pending in front of PUC right now, that GSWA has some proposals to reduce rates for those who are in low income categories and cannot afford it. And so I think it should be a win-win. And this is another one of those bills that the same sponsor is like targeting illegal dumping, solutions for illegal dumping that we have been challenged to come up with for decades. Done, doable. We just need to stand firm on this, and I urge all my colleagues to support this bill, and let's get universal trash collection done in what PUC calls the fair, equitable way for all of the people of Guam. Si Diyos masi.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill. Any other senator wishing to speak on the bill? Senator from Jigo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a few questions for the author of the bill. From your previous bill that was vetoed, have the answers been, has this bill corrected that and basically fixed the reasons for the veto?
Would the author yield to the question?
Yes, I yield to the question, and thank you for that question. So one of the concerns from the veto message, I understand, was that the customer assistance program wasn't fully detailed, and my like the retiring speaker said, that has to be developed in the rules and regs. It's something that the executive or the utility has to develop rather than try to put it in a bill. The other issue was the appropriations, and so I am going to introduce a bill to provide funding, a funding source for the customer assistance program. That is my intent. So this is one bill, and I guess, yeah, this is not the complete end-all, but this is an important piece, a very critical piece that Guam Solid Waste Authority really needs. And it was my intent to keep appropriations separate from the bill, which is I intend to follow through with.
Okay. Next question is PUC, and I'll just follow up with the next question. Guam Solid Waste. Have all the concerns been answered from the author?
Would the author yield to that question?
The answer should be very simple, yes. But I'll wait for the author to answer that.
Okay, so in looking at their testimony, they provided some recommendations, which was the removal of that low-income customer assistance rate, which has been done. Yeah, so that was the big part of their testimony in regards to that. And so in line with that, they also put in disclosure of billings. So because they recommended taking out the LICA rate, the low-income customer assistance rate, they also recommended that it be removed from the disclosure on the billings. So let's see, what else did they say? Yeah, so that was the big concern that they had.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, to the author, I read the bill and I read your committee report, and I stand in full support of the bill. The question I asked was, I just wanted the people of Guam to hear that, number one, the concerns of the governors were answered. The concerns of PUC was answered. Concerns of Guam Solid Waste were answered. And the concerns of this body has been answered. We wanted to help reduce the amount of trash on the side of the road and everywhere else and help clean up Guam. And with that, I stand in full support of this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill. On the bill. Any other senator wishing to speak on the bill? No other senator? Senator Parrish, you are getting close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues for a very lively discussion and dialogue. I think, you know, that just shows that this bill is critical and that we want to make sure we get it right. In fact, this is the second time this bill was introduced, and the first time there was a question about customer assistance program. So this time around, this bill was introduced to include a lifeline rate, which actually was objected by the PUC. And so this bill, this substitute bill, basically incorporated and listened to the testimonies, all testimonies, to try to support our community in whole. So we know that island-wide collections is critical for the financial health of Guam Solid Waste Authority. It also, as many officials have stated, will curb illegal dumping, which plagues our island today. And it would also reduce rates, as you can see in the rate case provided by Guam Solid Waste. Right now, we're on a track to increase rates to $38, but with this passage of this bill, it would bring it back down even further below what we pay. This bill also answers the concern about our low-income customers. So that is the purpose of the substitute bill, is to include the customer assistance program, which I firmly believe that our general manager can work a very good solution to. You know, he is known as a rock star in many circles. And not just in Guam, but also off island. And it also leaves the door open, so it doesn't mandate rates, because we acknowledge that PUC has that, it's their jurisdiction, it's their role. But it leaves the door open for, in the event that a lifeline rate is accepted by the PUC, that can also further help our low-income customers. So really, what this bill does, it is an improvement. And I thank my colleagues for this debate. I thank also the community. I thank Guam Solid Waste Authority, the board of directors, and everyone who has provided testimony to make this bill better so that their concerns are answered. And I appreciate the support of my colleagues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator. So therefore, you'd like to move the bill as substituted?
Thank you, Speaker. I make the motion to place substitute bill 30-38 into the third reading file.
On the motion to move the bill to third reading, any objections? No objections, so ordered. Gentleman from Maumutoto, Senator Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I would like to move bill number 45-38 COR onto the third reading file, and I would like to discuss.
You can proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hafaday, and good afternoon to my colleagues. And I thank you all for the opportunity to speak on bill number 45-38, Bentley's Law. This legislation seeks to add a new chapter to our criminal code to require anyone convicted of vehicular homicide while impaired to pay restitution to the victim's surviving minor children. In simpler terms, if a drunk or impaired driver tragically takes a parent's life, they must financially support the children left behind. I rise today in support of this measure, which is as much about compassion and responsibility as it is about justice. This bill is not new to our legislature. In fact, it has been developed over multiple years and through more than one legislative term. I first introduced a version of Bentley's Law in the 37th Guam Legislature, where it garnered strong public support. But unfortunately, time ran out before we could get it across the finish line. Rather than let the idea lapse, we carried forward to this term. Throughout this process, input has come from all sides, and it has truly been a bipartisan and community-driven effort. Bentley's Law is named after a child, Bentley, but it was born from the dedication of his grandmother, Cecilia Wilma Williams. The idea for this law first took root in Missouri after Mrs. Williams endured an unfathomable tragedy. She lost her 30-year-old son, Cordell, her 25-year-old daughter-in-law, Lacey, and her 4-month-old grandson, Cordell II. Lost in a crash caused by a drunk driver. In an instant, 2 young boys, Bentley and his brother Mason, were orphaned. Cecilia and her husband found themselves not only grieving as grandparents, but suddenly raising their grandsons and struggling to provide for them in the absence of their children's parents. Rather than be defeated by this tragedy, Mrs. Williams turned her pain into purpose. She became the driving force behind what we now call Bentley's Law, advocating tirelessly so that no other family would have to struggle the way hers did. As she stated in her advocacy, we are the ones who support our grandchildren financially, but a lot of families don't have the income to do that. And it was never intended to make anybody rich. It is intended to help with school clothes, to help put food on the table, shoes on their feet. In other words, the goal of Bentley's Law is not to punish offenders with excessive fines, but to ensure the basic needs of victims' children are met. Food, clothing, education, the things their mom and dad would have provided. What began as one grandmother's mission has grown into a nationwide movement. Bentley's Law initiatives have been introduced or passed in over a dozen U.S. states, with strong bipartisan backing in every case. Here on Guam, our community too has rallied around this idea. We have heard from grieving families, concerned parents, and safety advocates who believe this law is necessary and just. Even national advocacy organizations have voiced their support, reinforcing that we are on the right track. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, a leading voice in the fight against impaired driving, has publicly endorsed version of this bill. MAD states MAD supports Bentley's Law and similar bills that hold drunk driving offenders accountable. Too often, offenders are able to move on with their lives even after killing someone, while victims and survivors have to pay every day of their loss. In calendar year 2023, Guam recorded 29 traffic fatalities, the highest number in recent years. Each of those 29 lives lost is a tragedy that ripples through families in our community. The Guam Police Department reported hundreds of DUI arrests each year, 358 in 2021 alone, up from the prior year, showing that impaired driving remains a widespread problem. Each arrest is a potential tragedy averted. Each fatality is a heartbreaking loss that was not averted in time. I ask each of you to reflect on these numbers, not as statistics, but as people in our own island community. Behind every fatality are names and faces, loved ones who will never come home. Some of those lost were mothers, or fathers whose children are now forced to grow up without them. Those children are Guam's children. They attend our schools, play in our villages, and try to piece their lives back together with the help of grandparents, aunties, uncles, or foster families. We may not have an exact count of how many children on Guam have been left orphaned or financially strapped due to impaired driving crashes. But even one is too many. And we know for a fact it has happened. When I hear about a DUI crash on our island, I cannot help but think, what if that person had children? Who will take care of them now? As lawmakers, we have a duty to not only punish wrongdoing, but also care for the innocent. That is the heart of what we are doing with Bill number 45-38. Colleagues, let me be absolutely clear. The intent of Bentley's law, this bill seeks justice, not vengeance. It is not about adding another punitive measure for its own sake or throwing the book at offenders out of anger. Rather, it is about accountability and responsibility. As I've said before, this is not about punishment for punishment's sake. It is about making sure these children do not have to suffer twice. First, from the loss of a parent, and then from the loss of their future. In practical terms, that means if you choose to drink and drive and cause a death, you will owe a debt beyond what any criminal sentence can impose. A debt to the children left without a mom or dad. That debt comes in the form of financial support, child support payments that can pay for food, shelter, clothing, education, and the basic necessities of life for the kids who lost their parent. It sends a message that when you recklessly take a life on our roads, you owe more than an apology, more than jail time. You owe these kids the chance to pursue their dreams despite the void you created. In conclusion, I want to thank all my colleagues, the community members, and advocates who contributed to the development of Bill 45-38, Bentley's Law. This bill has passed through the crucible of bipartisan and public scrutiny over the years, and it has emerged better for it. It stands as a promise that we will not abandon the children of tragedy. It says to every family who has lost someone to an impaired driver, we see your pain. And while we cannot undo it, we will insist on a justice that cares for those left behind. It also says to anyone who might ever consider driving under the influence, think about the lives you could destroy, and know that if you do, Guam will hold you to account for the sake of the innocent. My dear colleagues, the losses Bentley's Law addresses are tragically avoidable. And that's what makes them so tragic, is the fact that they are avoidable and preventable. Drunk driving deaths are not random accidents. They are the result of choices that can and should be avoided. When those poor choices lead to the death of a mother or father, the suffering is multiplied. We cannot, in good conscience, allow the children of those victims to fend for themselves financially. I respectfully ask for your support of Bill 45-38. By passing this law, we affirm that Guam stands with victims, that we value our children's futures, and that we demand accountability when irresponsible actions tear families apart. Let us send a clear message to our island. If you recklessly take a parent from a child, you will be held responsible for helping to raise that child. Not out of vengeance, but out of a commitment to what is right and just. Sejus Masi, and thank you. I yield the rest of my time, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill, before we move, I think that it's only prudent that I address the gentlelady from Bergata first. Her amendments will help to bring some clarity. So, gentlelady from Bergata, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have a couple amendments to proffer, but I do support the idea that those that are, I believe that there should be consequences for those that are impacted by the loss of a parent. And I do support this bill. However, there are some amendments that I would like to proffer. The first one is on line 4 to 12, 1 through 26, pages 1 to 2. It's labeled B45 SFP L4 to 12, 1 to 26, and then P1 to 2.
We have copies of the amendments?
Okay, so basically what this amendment does, it corrects the chapter. Previously, there was a bill that was passed. I'm not sure if when this bill was introduced whether the compiler has kept up to date online. I know, but so right now there is something that's occupying Chapter 94. So this amendment would update it to Chapter 95 and also correct the numbering in the bill itself to match the chapter. So I ask for my colleagues' support.
Thank you. On the amendment, Senator Guptado, you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick support of that amendment, of course. And as like the retiring speaker mentioned, that the compiler law doesn't always have these particular laws in the Guam Code annotated as we're reviewing it. So I appreciate it, as well as the previous speaker. She's part of the committee, my committee, so I appreciate the work that she did on this particular bill. Thank you. The amendment is great. Okay.
Yeah, that's on the amendment.
Okay.
Senator Guptado, you have a.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was a couple of items in the report or in the public hearing that I was hoping to get clarified in the committee report, but based on when these amendments, I don't know if it's proper at this time, but can I move to send this bill back to committee to address these concerns that were addressed or that were brought forward by Senator Perez, and then we can come back and then bring it back here for its further action?
Let's take a minute recess. Legislature's back in session. Senator Gumatauto, you're going to renew that motion?
Mr. Speaker, I'll go ahead and withdraw this time.
You're withdrawing your motion.
Yes, I'm barring anything else from the committee. That's fine. I'll withdraw for now.
All right. Okay. Let's take a 1-minute recess first, okay? The title of the bill has got to be changed out. Okay? Because if we don't change out the title, it's going to be inconsistent with what the amendments are going to be. Okay. Okay, we're back from recess. Senator Sabina, Senator Parrish, you still have the floor.
I believe I spoke on my amendment, so I'm just, I believe my colleagues can chime in.
Okay. On the amendment, Senator from Jigo, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I support the amendment because it's just going to correct the proper title. I think the title of the bill has got to change to reflect that it's Chapter 9, 95. Yeah, the chapter just has to change on the bill. So I ask that maybe the author of the amendment just add that to her amendment to reflect that it's Chapter 95, and then we can move on, and we'll be okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the amendment. On the amendment. Okay. No other speakers on the amendment? You want to close the on
Point of inquiry, was that an amendment to my amendment as
No.
far as adding the change in title?
Yeah. Well, you do have that.
Yeah, I do have at the bottom to allow legal and clerks to make technical corrections. I don't know if that encompasses the title of the bill.
Based on the presentation by the gentleman from Jigo.
So it's part of the
It's part of
allowing legal to make corrections.
We
Okay.
I needed to make sure that that was, okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Proffered. Okay?
Absolutely. No closing at this time. I waive closing.
Okay. Any objections to the amendment? No objections to the amendment to include that the technical changes will be made to the title to reflect it. Yeah. Okay, it's going to be done. It's already in the bottom of it. Okay, but I just needed somebody to be able to point it out on the floor. Okay? No objections, so ordered. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The second amendment is B45 SFP L8 to 9 P1. It states to amend, and so this should also be corrected. Section, it says 94102A. Now that we've, I guess that was based on the bill itself. So to amend the section 94102A, which now is going to be 95102A, to read children means a biological child, stepchild, or foster child of whom and then victim is crossed out, and the added language is a surviving parent, guardian, or child protective services as defined in section 13101G, chapter 13, title 19 Guam Code, annotated under this act has legal custody. So the reason I proffer this is to provide more clarity to this definition of who this bill is addressing.
On the amendment, First off, it's going to read, instead of 94-102A, it's going to be 95-102A. Okay? But on the amendment, any discussion on the amendment? Gentlelady from Georgia, you're recognized, ma'am.
Yeah, I want to stand in support of the amendment and thank the author of the amendment for finding this error and fixing it. It's the victim, of course, is the parent who died, and so they will be, the child will be survived by a surviving parent, a guardian, or CPS is going to take custody. And this amendment also points out the reality that in these situations, there may be no surviving parents, and CPS is going to take custody. This child will become a foster child. So I thank the author of this amendment, and I support it.
Thank you. On the amendment, any other senators wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Parrish, you will waiving and close? Okay. Are there any objections to this amendment? No objections, so ordered. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This third amendment is labeled B45 SFP L 10 to 12, 1 to 17, page 1 to 2. And so it reads, to amend section 94103A, which is now 95103A. So what this amendment does, it corrects subsection A. So it strikes out, in addition to the sentencing requirements in subsection B of this section, any, so that is struck out because, and it's clarified that any person who is convicted of vehicular homicide while driving impaired is defined in section 92111A, chapter 92 of Title IX Guam Code annotated. So it just makes it clear that in addition to the perpetrator of a vehicular homicide, that they will then have to pay restitution. The other thing it corrects is there's a lot of mention of article throughout this bill, and it should be corrected to chapter, because that's what this bill is doing, is adding a chapter, not an article. And then it also includes language about, including in section A, subsection 2, it includes also child protective services if they have assumed foster custody of a child. So it makes all those corrections. The other thing that it adds is, or it strikes out, is a standard of living to which the child is accustomed. So I guess I question whether a child who is impacted by the death of a parent of a poor family should be treated differently from a child of a rich family. So I think that even though it's a consideration, you know, that's a question that I have regard, so that's why that's being struck out. And I ask for my colleagues' support.
And the amendment further re-enumerates as a result of that strikeout.
Yes, and so because that was struck out, the numbering has changed, but also to allow legal and clerks to make any technical corrections. Thank you.
Okay. On the amendment, Senator from Georgia, sir, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, for the chance to rise in support of the amendment. I think, in doing the research about this Bentley's law, you'll see that in the states where it has been implemented, there's still a lot of confusion about exactly how it works and exactly how to get this restitution to the surviving victims. So I commend the author, who, I don't know if the viewing public, I'm pretty sure they do. She was a teacher in a previous career. And so anytime we get these amendments from her, I always tease her, thank you for taking out your red pen on this one. She put on her teacher hat, she took out the red pen. And I commend these amendments, which aim to really streamline and correct. Obviously, there were some things that were missed here, and the bill is introduced. I'm very grateful to the author of the amendment, and I stand in support of it. Sidos Masi.
Thank you very much. On the amendment, Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? No one else? Senator Perez, you want to close? Okay, she's waiving the... On the amendment, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered. Senator Perez, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this last amendment is to correct subsection B of the bill. Actually, it was labeled as 94103B, but now it's 950-103B. And so what it does is it changes the word article to chapter in this subsection B. The other thing that this amendment does, it adds language which was taken from Bentley's law. And so I'll just read it. So it would add, so arrangements for payment if incarcerated. So this is the subsection it's in. The defendant ordered to pay restitution under this chapter shall enter into a payment plan to address any unpaid obligations. If a defendant's restitution payments are set to terminate but the obligation is not paid in full, the restitution payment shall continue until the entire obligation is paid. And then the other part of this that's being added, if the surviving parent or guardian of the child brings a civil action against the defendant prior to the court ordering restitution payments, and the surviving parent or guardian obtains a judgment in civil suit in which the compensatory damages are awarded, no restitution shall be ordered under this chapter. And then number 4, if the court orders the defendant to make restitution payments under this chapter and the surviving parent or guardian subsequently brings a civil action against the defendant and obtains a judgment, the restitution payment shall be offset by the amount of the judgment awarded in the civil action. So these additions kind of brings more clarity in regards to payment of restitution, or if civil action is you know, whether to take a restitution or civil action. So it provides clarity in those cases, as well as ensuring that the defendant creates a payment plan until their obligation is fully paid off, which the bill currently doesn't have any kind of mechanism in case that the defendant currently doesn't have any means to pay. There is going to be a payment plan in place.
On the amendment, any senator wishing to speak on the amendment? Okay. Senator Parrish, you want to close?
I ask for my colleagues' support and in making this bill, improving this bill so that it could be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. And the amendment, any objections to the amendment? No objections, so ordered. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor, ma'am. No? Okay. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Any senator from Telephone, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to offer, call it an observation, if you will, on Bill 45-38, which, if approved, requires individuals convicted of vehicular homicide while impaired to pay restitution to the surviving minor children of their victim or victims. It's no secret, Mr. Speaker, that the bill mirrors Bill 84-37 that was introduced in March of 2023. However, that measure did not receive enough support to be reported out of the Committee on Health, Land, Justice, and Culture for consideration by the full legislature. According to the committee report on Bill 45, the initial version from the last term was rewritten significantly based on testimony from the Office of the Attorney General and the Department of Public Health and Social Services. Mr. Speaker, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, every day, about 37 people in the United States die in drunk driving crashes. That's one person every 39 minutes. In 2022, 13,524 people died in alcohol-impaired driving traffic deaths. Mr. Speaker, during the public hearing on this Bill 45-38, I offered a couple of comments which I would like to reiterate for today's discussion. Mr. Speaker, I wish to ask a question of the primary sponsor if I could. Is there any information available regarding steps that the Office of the Attorney General might be able to take administratively to expand the provisions of Bill 45 to mirror the powers of the Attorney General's Child Support Enforcement Division, including securing restitution payments through wage garnishment, placing liens on property, intercepting tax refunds, and revoking passports?
Would the author yield to the question?
Could I get a repeat of that question, sir?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Is there any information available regarding steps that the Office of the Attorney General might take or might be able to take administratively to expand the provisions of Bill 45 to mirror the powers of the Attorney General's Child Support Enforcement Division, including securing restitution payments through wage garnishment, placing liens on property, intercepting tax refunds, and or revoking passports?
Clear with the question? You yield?
Yeah, I'll yield to the question. If I'm understanding your question correctly, it's regarding whether the Attorney General could do anything administratively. I'm not sure whether the Attorney General can or cannot do anything administratively. They did not testify in either for or against the legislation when it was going through the public hearing process. When I thought of how this bill operates, for my mind, I did not think of the Attorney General as party to this process in so much as he is the attorney for the government of Guam and the people of Guam, but I looked at this primarily as a process to be handled through the courts.
Did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. While no policy, Mr. Speaker, will ever replace a life lost to negligence, particularly decisions made by individuals to operate a motor vehicle while under the influence of harmful substances, mandating individuals who are convicted of these crimes to support the basic financial needs of surviving minor children of victims is the very least that this government can and should require through public policy. With that said, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity again to share my thoughts on Bill 45. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill as amended, any senator wishing? Gentlelady from Jonia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that, yeah, there was a very similar bill that went through the last legislature, public hearing, and the report was circulated, but did not receive enough votes in the committee to be reported out. But before it was circulated, there were significant amendments made to the original bill based on testimony at that time of the Attorney General of Guam and of the several others, including the division, BOSA at Child Support, the Division of Children's Wellness. And so the bill, I think it was our legal counsel who took the bill with the author and tried to conform to the issues raised by the parties at the public hearing. But again, it did not pass in that legislature. So I see this bill today that there are actually just two changes from that version. One is here. One is on page 1, where they say any person convicted, 94103A, any person convicted of vehicular homicide while driving impaired shall be required to pay restitution. They had at that time addressed any person over the age of 18 because one of the concerns of the AAG was, or what happens if they're younger than 18 while they're driving? Who is going to bear that burden? Are they, those also minor children, going to bear that burden? And then on the bottom of page 2, line 23, this new bill has a provision that talks about, so this bill only addresses restitution. There'll be restitution ordered. And on line 23, it says, a restitution order issued under this article, now chapter, may be enforced by the court or by a surviving parent or guardian of the person named in order to receive the restitution in the same manner as a judgment in a civil action. So it's not that easy to enforce it, but that's how it's going to be enforced, like a judgment in a civil action. It's not as easy as having the AG do all the work for you. I think you might even have to get your own lawyer to do that. But there were some concerns by the AG that were maybe philosophical, I will say, or implementation-wise, that are not addressed, and I just want to point to those because I wonder. So in this case, in this bill, what we're doing is it's going to say if you're convicted of vehicular homicide, impaired, you're drunk driving, and you kill somebody, the court can order restitution to take care of the child who's left behind. All right? So then the AG had asked or said that the legislation may have unforeseen problems for other crimes such as aggravated murder, manslaughter, negligent homicide, and aggravated assault, where victims survived but is permanently made disabled from the assault. And the convicted person for these crimes should also be liable for supporting the victim's minors' children. I guess he alluded to, like, we are opening a Pandora's box, that if we're going to do it for drunk driving, are we going to do it for all other crimes? These violent crimes, at least, that he listed. And I just wanted to clarify, because at the time when this bill was previously routing, there were only, I think, 4 states that had implemented this law. And it said 15 that were considering it in the next year. And I just wanted to ask if the committee chair or the author would yield to how many states actually have implemented this law to date. There were only 4 in 2024.
Would either the committee chair oversight or the author yield to the question? The author, sir?
Yes, I believe I said in my opening statement a dozen states had adopted Bentley's law.
All right, so 12 out of 50. All right, thank you. Those are my questions.
You're very welcome. Any other senators on the bill as amended? Gentlelady from Tamuning, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker. You know, as the oversight chair of this committee, you know, it was unfortunate that we didn't get that many, well, we didn't get anyone except one person to testify during the public hearing. We reached out to the Attorney General's office, as I did hope the author of the legislation had done the same. And we were anticipating to get some more feedback with regards to that. When I had the public hearing, the markup meeting to discuss this bill, nobody was there. I almost didn't want to even report this bill out because it had so many issues with it. And as the committee chair, it's one thing to look at legislation and determine whether this legislation just needs a few twerks here and there to make it better, or completely rewrite the whole bill again. I mean, the whole intention for us on session floor is to be able to present a bill to this body that doesn't need to be rewritten or corrected throughout the whole bill. I was really hoping that that motion would go through to send this bill back to committee so that we can have an opportunity to provide more input, not just from one individual, the grandmother of this, why this bill was introduced, the name in which it was introduced from. But to really dig deep in some of the questions that many of us had, for instance, what happens if two parents are driving, the father is the breadwinner and the mother is not, or vice versa, doesn't matter, and the person who is not the breadwinner passes away? So how much funding is going to be needed for that family? You know, it just, there's a lot of moving parts here. And one of my biggest concerns too, during public hearing, if it's okay for drunk driving, what about if you're walking into a store and you're, you know, God forbid, your parent gets shot with a robbery going in progress, and that happens? It's just not fair. The original bill was a one-pager. This one has several pages and still doesn't address a lot of the concerns. I wanted the opportunity once again to ask the Attorney General, or even somebody in the legal field, to come and testify or to provide testimony or comments on the bill. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time for some of these bills, but you know, I'm very concerned about this piece of legislation. We're passing something that really did not get a full input from stakeholders. And I just feel, you know, the next time a bill comes to my committee and it looks like I'm going to have to rewrite the whole bill and the author of the legislation expects us to just write something new, I'm not going to do it. That bill will stay in my committee until the author of that legislation comes forward and corrects those mistakes. We're not here writing the bill for them. They introduced it. They should follow through with a good, sound bill for our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill as amended, gentleman from Georgia, you recognize.
Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak on the bill, which, you know, on its surface, if you Google Bentley's law, it's very hard to disagree with the intent of what this bill is trying to do. It's a very noble intent. And this is something that we do here in the legislature as we look for these laws that are implemented in the states. I passed one, Jessica's law. Bentley's law is another one. But I know the author had said, when questioned by a previous speaker, that there were 12 states that have implemented this, a version of this law, but I can't seem to find that. Maybe I'm not a good enough Googler, but I've only come up with a handful, I think 4 to 7 states, and then there are many other states who have introduced similar measures that have yet to pass. And I bring this up because, as good as the intent of this bill is, there are issues that states that have implemented this bill struggle with. One of the issues is in Tennessee, for example, they're debating, there's a lot of confusion about the implementation of this law because they're debating whether victims and survivors can be paid twice for the same accident, whether they can be paid an insurance settlement and then whether they can be paid the restitution. And I think for me, maybe some of the other states that are entertaining these issues are coming upon the same type of train of thought that I've had. And again, not to question the intent of the bill, but on Guam, the penalty for driving under the influence, vehicular homicide while driving impaired, it's an 8 to 15 year sentence to include a fine of $10,000. And just some recent cases, in 2022, a man was convicted for vehicular homicide while driving impaired. He was sentenced to a 15-year sentence. And so if you look at the bill, under Section B, the arrangements for payment if incarcerated, and this is kind of what I was thinking, you know, we want these people to be punished for driving under the influence, vehicular homicide while driving under the influence. And traditionally that punishment is they get convicted and they serve a sentence, right? And in these cases, I think we want them to serve the maximum sentence. And so in just reading the bill, that section, arrangement for payments if incarcerated, if a defendant ordered to pay restitution under this article is unable to make the required restitution payments because the defendant is confined or imprisoned in a correctional facility, the defendant shall begin payments no later than the first anniversary of the date of the defendant's release from the facility. And so we could very well end up with scenarios, and it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? Because like I said, you want these people to be put away for as long as we can put them away for as part of the punishment for committing such a crime. But for example, if this law was implemented here, that man who was convicted in 2022 of vehicular homicide while driving impaired wouldn't even make the first payment on any type of restitution until 2038. And that's if they even had the ability to make these payments of restitution. And so that's kind of just what I was thinking. I'm not going to go as far as to say the bill, when I read about it, sounded too good to be true. I want it to be true, right? We want something like this. We want this restitution for these victims who were left behind by these heinous crimes. But I'm just not sure if the bill will do that, especially since we've seen states that have already implemented this bill. And you know, it's a matter of debate and discussion, right? You kind of, with these kind of bills where they're, you know, for example, pushed by an organization, in this case, a great organization like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, you want to see how many states pass these laws, implement them, and then kind of gauge whether there are problems, what needs to be worked out. And I think with this particular policy, maybe those things are still being worked out where this type of measure has been passed. And so I only worry that we're going to pass this bill and end up either in situations where that restitution is not going to come for many years down the road, and then in the meantime, what happens to these children who are left behind? So those are just some of the questions and concerns that I had. But, you know, more importantly, I wanted to close, Mr. Speaker, with just a plea, because if you go back and you pay attention, the medical examiner had a report. He did a report about there was information in there about drug overdoses. There was information in there about deaths that occurred on the roadways. And unfortunately, sadly, tragically, just about every death that took place on the roadways was the result of the driver driving while impaired. Whether it was they tested positive for meth or alcohol. And so I just want to plead with our island to do their best to not drive while impaired, to not drink and drive. And I think as elected representatives, as the people's voices, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard, to set that example for our people. So whether you're a governor, a lieutenant governor, a delegate, a senator, a mayor, I just ask that you exercise caution and drive responsibly, drink responsibly, so that we can avoid these tragedies, which unfortunately we've seen many times happen right here on our island. And so, Mr. Speaker, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to kind of just rise and discuss some of the points that are coming up in my mind, and I'm hopeful that if we do pass this bill and we do implement, and it does get signed into law, that we're able to implement it. And I'm not sure if that requires the involvement of the Attorney General and maybe some of the victims advocates that work in that office, if they have a role to play in here. But I just want to ensure that if we're going to pass a bill like this and we're going to tell the people of Guam that if a drunk driver kills your mom, your dad, your guardian, that drunk driver is going to pay for what they did. We want to make sure that that's really going to happen, and that payment, that punishment is a reality. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much. On the bill as amended. On the bill as amended. Any senator wishing to speak? On the bill as amended. No other senators? Senator Parkinson, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask my colleagues to please support this law. When I think about what could happen on the roads of Guam, I think about my own family, the families of everybody in this chamber. I know for a lot of us, part of this job is we spend an inordinate amount of time on the road. All of us do, probably more than most people, going around to various things all over the island. And I always think, when I think about the rates of drunk driving on the island, what that would do to my own family and to all the other families of people I know. And I wanted to make sure that, God forbid, that I was ever in a situation like that, my family and my children would be taken care of. And I think that's fair to ask for everybody on the island. I'd like to thank the committee chair for letting this bill out of the committee. When we had spoken about this bill about markups, I had told her that I support any and all corrections that need to be made. And at the time of the markup meeting, no suggestions at all were proffered. And so I thank the good senator that proffered so many amendments that cleaned up a few clerical errors. Clerical errors that took a few minutes to fix. And so I'd also like to thank my other colleague who withdrew his motion to send this bill back to committee. Because as we were able to show on the floor, it really wasn't going to be that much of a long delay. We were able to get through it pretty swiftly. And for that, I thank all my colleagues for their cooperation in getting these changes, these necessary changes made to the bill. I've always said that I appreciate any and all amendments, that I've never fought any amendments to my bill. And so I appreciate the work that the good senator is breaking out her red pen and making those corrections. One of the questions that come up is, why should impaired driving be addressed different than other crimes like murder and armed robbery and other situations where there could be a loss of life? And to that I say that certainly support for all victims is important. And this legislation doesn't diminish that at all. However, I will say, Bentley's law specifically addresses impaired driving fatalities because these deaths are uniquely tragic, yet entirely preventable. This bill reflects society's clear stance that those who choose to drive impaired and take innocent lives bear direct responsibility for lasting consequences or their choices. This bill is not trying to solve all the problems for all the crimes in the world. If somebody wants to introduce a version of this for murder or other types of crimes, by all means, let's have that public discussion. But this bill is specifically targeted toward the scourge of drunk driving, the scourge of preventable deaths, had people just made better decisions, gave keys to somebody, Ask the staffer to drive them home. Anything but getting behind the wheel of a car. And so I thank my colleagues for the discussion. I did have a request from one colleague. I would like to add Senator Shelley Calvo as a co-sponsor to the bill, if that would be okay. And with the proffer of the amendments, I'd also like to add Senator Sabina Perez as a co-sponsor of the bill, if she'd be willing.
Okay. On the amendment motion to add Senator Shelley Calvo and Senator Sabina Perez as co-sponsors to the legislation, are there any objections? No objections, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, I ask my colleagues to please support this bill. This bill was never intended to solve all the problems of all the crimes in the world, but this bill is specifically targeted towards drunk driving. And I appreciate all my colleagues' suggestions for making it better. And like I believe all laws are a work in progress, as a society is a work in progress, and we make the necessary changes as they come along. So I thank my colleagues for the discussion, and at this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to move this bill to the third reading to vote.
On the motion to move the bill as amended to the third reading, there is an objection. There is an objection to the bill. Okay? So on the motion to send this bill to the third reading, all those in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, let's take a 2-minute recess. We have to reset the AV. Okay, so 2-minute recess.